right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, October 24th, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Tuesday, everyone. It is a soggy and overcast 61 degrees here in upstate New York. I don't know, there was some sort of cyclone, upper atmosphere cyclone that shot up all the way from Florida to New York. It was still raining in Florida when it started raining here. And I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning with this wind blowing in the window, getting wet from the storm that was coming from the wrong direction. It was pretty interesting. So where do we leave off on Friday? We titled the show Facebook, Intel, Google, SpaceX, 5G, Internet of Things, mmWave, military, and biosensing. We are going to continue along that vein today. We took a look at a lot of the satellites that Elon Musk has been launching recently and how the Israeli company Spacecom, I think they manufactured the satellite for Facebook to provide 5G millimeter wave internet to the continent of Africa, has inked a new agreement with SpaceX to not only launch the replacement satellite that they lost in the explosion last year, but also to launch 2 additional satellites. And of course, this is all in the name of serving rural populations. Millimeter wave technology eyed by Facebook for serving rural populations. This is out of techexplorer.com. In 2013, Facebook and other tech companies launched Internet.org. The idea was to have a global partnership for a unified goal in making the Internet available to billions of people without access. In 2014, Facebook introduced the work of the Connectivity Lab. Its team was working on, quote, developing new platforms for connectivity on the ground, in the air, and in orbit. Zuckerberg says that their work was about building drones, satellites, and lasers to deliver internet to everyone. And of course, it's not going to be just internet. It was interesting. We talked about Google's Skybender project and their solar-powered drones to provide millimeter wave 5G to the nether regions of the planet as well. Mark Zuckerberg was working on expanding this connectivity, and this week comes patent news that says that Facebook is developing millimeter wave networks. Russell Brandom in The Verge, which is another publication that we read frequently on the show, saw a similarity in the initiative from Starry, which had announced a venture for gigabit mesh networks in January. And it looks as if Starry is not the only technology company that is developing this. Engadget senior editor Devira Hardwar in January wrote about the new company Starry using high-frequency millimeter wave technology to deliver gigabit speeds to homes wirelessly. Well, how interesting is that? Everyone go run out and get your new 5G device. Hardwar noted that this was the first consumer company to use millimeter wave technology to deliver wireless internet access, but up until now, that has been a technology mainly used, we talked about this on Friday, by the military for radar and wink other purposes. And we'll get more into that. Might these sorts of millimeter wave networks signify a real turning point for the way poorer and rural populations are able to connect to the web? Well, don't worry about that one, because remember, we've run across millimeter wave technology before, and that was in your naked body scanners in the airport, meant to be a quote-unquote safer alternative to backscatter scanners, which utilized X-rays, but we're going to read about that as well. The next web referred to it as a kind of data network making use of millimeter wave bands and delivering internet connections without the need to build out an extensive infrastructure, and especially if they can use it for cellular communications as well, next generation. The Verge said that Facebook confirmed that the millimeter wave research was part of the Internet.org's effort to build out internet access for rural and poor populations. Facebook representative said that the work was part of its connectivity lab. And it'll be interesting to see how far Facebook takes this technology. Yeah, remember, Zuckerberg is another Harvard alumni, particularly since it might conflict with Starry's ideas for expanding internet connectivity. Well, I don't think Zuckerberg is worried about Starry. Looking at the two patents, the patents were titled mmWave non-line of sight, and the second was distribution node and client node for next generation data networks. The latter presented an argument for why the Facebook approach made sense. Data networks have traditionally been wired, either copper or fiber. Wireless spectrum has typically been used for subscriber links, not data infrastructure, except on some intra-building stuff we used to configure. Microwave, you would beam microwave from one building to the next. The advent of microcells, picocells, and nanocells, as well as hotspots, has made the provisioning of wired data prohibitively expensive. And this is the result of inflexibility of wired networks. Cable has to be run to the new points of presence, and in many cases, this requires that streets be torn up, right? If you never thought about putting fiber in to go from data center to data center. So now as this advent of millimeter wave data connectivity in the sky is coming to fruition, let's take a look at the spectrum, millimeter wave in the spectrum band. There's a pretty nice graphic here that I will link to in the notes of the show. But it takes a look from the 300 megahertz to the 300 gigahertz spectrum. They show how that is all under the guise of microwaves, which we know that microwaves have been used for many decades now as part of the military and surveillance and high-tech energy weapon technology, like in the sonic range, even in the Gulf War back in those days. But also we have the cellular range that falls within that. And then we have the millimeter range, which is where the 5G is going to reside. And beyond that is the terahertz range. We're going to look at that today as well, if I can make sure to make my way through the stories. So let's listen to this. This is out of a publication in the American Journal of Engineering Research from 2013. Why is there a need for 5G? Well, this paper mainly focuses on how a 5G network can provide more facility approaches to a common man to utilize his available possessions in an enormous way to make him feel the real progress. So by giving you enchanted objects and the Internet of Things, all real-time connected, not only to the Internet, but to some sort of artificial intelligence cloud, this will make you feel the real progress when your garage door talks to you and your refrigerator knows when you're out of milk. As a user, else then increased maximized throughput. Other requirements include, 1, it could make better revenue for current global operators, as well as interoperability would become more feasible. Number 2, improved and innovative data coding and modulation techniques, which includes filter bank multi-carrier ways in the schemes. Number 3, I don't know if I want to read all these. For wireless access and backhaul use of millimeter wave frequency is very useful. And blah, 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 blah. Let's go down to the bottom. More applications can be combined with artificial intelligence as human life will be surrounded by artificial sensors, which could be communicating with mobile phones and then back to the cloud. And cheaper traffic fees due to the infrastructure deployment costs being low. So guys, this is the plan, is to be able to not only connect it all together, but to be able to then connect to your cell phones and send information back to whoever is looking at it, which will probably be the big pulsating brain in the sky that is bagging, tagging, and sorting and putting it into a nice, pretty dashboard for the surveillance team that is keeping their eye on you. So this is out of Department of Energy. We read some of this on Friday. Millimeter wave sensors track biometrics, detect chemicals, gases, and radiation. Security threats come in many forms: airborne, radiative, gaseous, human, or infiltrative, and it can be costly and impractical to deploy a broad suite of detector technologies to identify all the potential hazards in a public place. Well, Argonne Labs' millimeter wave sensor technologies measure a wide range of threats remotely, making them well-suited to many security, industrial, and medical applications. Remember, this is also going to be rolling out through the Internet of Medical Things. Natural gas pipelines stretch across the United States, and pipeline leaks can be deadly, so their leak detection system can draw air samples from specific inspection locations, and the radar techniques use millimeter wave to remotely detect and image above-ground natural gas leaks, because they use spectroscopy. Remember, they are using millimeter wave already in the search for a new Earth in space for radio astronomy, and they use the spectroscopy feature of millimeter wave to be able to detect what elements are on the distant planet that they have in their sights. All matter emits electromagnetic radiation, and Argonne scientists developed a detector that focuses on high-frequency waves emitted by chemical gases as they pass through the atmosphere. With passive spectroscopes, the detector uses millimeter wave to produce spectral signals, and because every chemical produces a unique signal, and I think yellow is sodium, if I remember correctly, and like a green is copper. I took astronomy in college, and we did this whole spectroscopy thing in our experiment when we were viewing different planets. You could, even without a radio telescope, you could determine at times what chemicals are involved. Even when you're looking at a supernova and you see all those pretty, or maybe nebulas, you see all those pretty colors. Those are the colors of heated elements from the, what's it called? The periodic table, that are burning within those bodies of gases. Anyone who took Chemistry 101 would know that. Anyway, with passive spectroscopes, the detector uses millimeter waves to produce spectral signals. Because every chemical produces a unique signal, the device can detect the signature of dangerous chemical situations before they do harm. Beyond detection, passive millimeter wave technology can also create images of targets detected through plume mapping, and this invention received an R&D 100 award in 2007. And I'm wondering if that isn't some of the new technology where DARPA has made these lasers that can see through bad weather, clouds, and smoke. So out of Argonne National Lab, they published a paper titled Millimeter Wave Remote Biometric Identification and Tracking Systems for Security Applications. And hold on, because I'm getting old here. I need to do a Control Plus a couple times to make the type bigger. There we go, better. The Millimeter Wave Remote Biometric Identification and Tracking System for Security Applications addresses one of the nation's top homeland security concerns: the need for real-time remote surveillance of aspects of human behavior, ding, 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 behavior monitoring, to help identify terrorists. And such monitoring involves the collection, measurement, and interpretation of biometric data from individuals, such as their heart rate, and we read about that on Friday, their breathing rate, and their movement. We also read on Friday that they could do that while you were in a crowd remotely as well. This mission of conducting constant surveillance on a large number of human subjects is difficult and complex, and it needs to be performed. Now remember, this is coming out of the Department of Energy, no less. It needs to be performed at a variety of critical locations, such as airports, border patrol entrances, cargo inspection harbors. So the machine should be portable, easy to deploy, and able to operate in all types of weather. The task is especially difficult because the human targets are moving and should not know that they are being monitored, wink, and thus automated motion tracking and biometric surveillance from a distance is required. The tools must be non-invasive, i.e. not touch the target, and work through their clothing and perhaps through walls. And it must provide accurate results almost immediately. This system has two other critically important applications. It could be used in the battlefield, of course, and at disaster sites, and that's always the other sell point, to aid in triage and response trying to find survivors. We developed the first remote heartbeat, respiration, and body motion identification and tracking system on the basis of modern millimeter wave techniques. And some of the beneficial features and capabilities are: one, it is the first system to remotely identify and persistently track a subject while recording his or her heartbeat, respiration, and movement. It senses through clothing and many common optically opaque materials such as masonry, so it can even see through walls. And to conduct long-range surveillance, it can take measurements from tens of meters away, and the camera maintains its aim when obstructions, particularly partially or temporarily, block its field of view. It operates under harsh conditions. It works in darkness and daylight and is not affected by atmospheric conditions such as moisture, dust, and smoke. And the entire system can be rapidly deployed and adapted to covert operations. It provides real-time, on-the-spot measurements of biometric data, and it uses an advanced feature extraction and data analysis algorithm, let's give it the AI, that is nearly 100% accurate in identifying humans and more than 98.8% accurate in identifying heartbeat and respiration patterns. It can be integrated with existing vision-based biometrics and video surveillance systems. Well, that makes me feel really special. And it can be used for biometric security, battlefield triage, and to search for vital signs after disasters, to monitor a patient's heart condition and movement, and to combat identity theft for online monitoring of operating machinery, and to monitor vehicles to avoid collisions, because they are also talking about using this very same technology in self-driving cars. The millimeter wave RBIT product is a combination of 3 interoperational subsystems, and I don't think we really need to read that. But let's talk about millimeter wave enhancing military projects as well. Given its potential for sensing and high-rate data communications, millimeter wave technology is a prime candidate for enabling the latest military, aerospace, and security technology. The spectrum congestion in the lower gigahertz regions has caused many industries to seek out technology solutions in the millimeter wave spectrum. This is going to unify it all. In fact, technology developments for millimeter wave research and development is in almost every industry right now. Specifically, the military and aerospace industries are looking to millimeter wave technology to increase connectivity and sensing for next generation tactical networks, security, electronic warfare, and even active denial systems. I hope that isn't like UAVs that come and target you with a laser beam. The interest is being met with sponsored initiatives or product development from military organizations such as the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, more affectionately known as DARPA, as well as the Air Force Research Laboratory and many military and security contractors. For its part, the Air Force Research Laboratory, a dedicated organization within the United States Air Force. Remember, the United States Air Force is also the one that has that X-37B, and the Space Command is tasked with developing warfighting technologies in the area of air, space, and cyberspace. So we're a target, as well as those Ruskies and the North Koreans. And to meet these goals, the Air Force Research Laboratory is delving into millimeter wave technologies, including high beam transmit arrays. The laboratory's goal is to enable the Air Force to address the latest increase in bandwidth, data rate, and linearity requirements, thereby enhancing their communication systems with millimeter wave technology. Let's move a little bit forward here, because then we tie into this. The next step in the spectrum beyond millimeter wave is terahertz communication. And terahertz is going to be used in some of this 5G topology as they are building these new networks out as the wireless backhaul capability, higher speed, higher spectrum, up to the satellite from the ground. And they're going to have all these little microcells and picocells all over your smart cities to be able to collect data from your Internet of Things, send it then to the 5G network, which then goes over terahertz to the satellite network to be beamed to whatever data center they've seen fit. Let's read about this, because the smart city piece of this puzzle is something that we haven't talked a lot about. We did way back when, but not recently. We haven't. And there were a few interesting shows this weekend. Hal Anthony behind the woodshed touched upon it, as well as Corbett in the show we aired this week. A lot about Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, which it was rewritten to, I believe, where they are planning on coming in at a global level, and they are implementing this at a local level. But this is a global plan to move everyone out of the rural communities into the cities, all in the name of climate change and carbon quotient and protecting the environment. But this will allow them to bag, tag, and track every living human and resource, and use technology to not only enslave but control. You will lose every bit of privacy. City planners can now leverage information, communication technology, and the Internet of Things to create technology and manage safe, efficient communities. Now, why would we want to be getting cell phone service out to rural communities? And I mean, yeah, I do like to have cell phone service when I'm out in the country. But why do all the people that don't have it right now and choose not to have it right now need the biggest, best, and fastest enabling virtual reality real time in the rural communities and Africa? Well, it's because they want to be able to manage everything around the world. Governments are now sponsoring smart city initiatives to increase safety and improve services, and these programs prioritize technology that measurably improve the quality of life and the efficiency of communities while also reducing costs. Remember, we've talked about smart light posts that do surveillance. They also got cameras everywhere, video surveillance and CCTV that is all being connected to the larger information grid out there that will be able to be surveilled on a global level. Smart city networks can be any size and density, and the 5G initiative is going to help propel this forward. In fact, some of the most dramatic achievements have been made in smaller communities where applications are deployed in greenfield environments. Smart cities invest in technologies that empower collaboration, enabling communities to share sensor data. Remember, it's all going to be about sensors. They're going to be everywhere. And leverage common IP-based communications infrastructures like the cell phone network. Wireless broadband provides high-speed connectivity needed, supporting proven solutions that can be deployed at a fraction of the cost and time of fiber and wired connectivity. They can be doing video surveillance, public Wi-Fi connectivity. Of course, we're going to give it to you for free, dangling carrot. Connectivity at special events like at the auditorium, so you can broadcast live using virtual reality at the football game. Traffic control, that would be for your traffic lights and digital signage. Infrastructure monitoring and control, street light controls, automatic metering infrastructure, that would be your smart meters, and parking lot applications. The Internet of Things supports smart cities. Global analyst firm Gartner has predicted that by 2020, there'll be more than 20 billion, quote-unquote, things connected to the Internet, sending data all over the world. These Internet of Things devices could be anything from fish tanks to fidget spinners, sunglasses, fridges, and other home appliances. And all of these devices have the ability to send and receive data not only between one another, and they do. I was reading about the new processors they're planning on putting in these things that not only can communicate to your wireless network or to the 5G wireless network, but also they send data between each other. But this presents a very enticing opportunity. When such devices are integrated into the infrastructure of our towns and our cities, they have the potential to revolutionize the way that we live our lives, putting you into the control grid, making our cities more accessible, safer, and easier to navigate. And for fleet operation managers in particular, this presents a very exciting opportunity. Smart cities use internet-connected devices and sensors to analyze information across the infrastructure, and they can gather data on road conditions, weather, and even the flow of traffic. They naturally can provide local authorities with a great deal of useful information in order to help them bag, tag, and do their jobs more effectively. For example, road sensors can detect if an area needs maintenance urgently, allowing them to judge which jobs ought to take priority over others. Over long term, they can use mmWave to scan people walking in a crowd with the new K7 little robot. Remember, we talked about that about a week ago, where they can use naked body scanners on the streets and mobily to see whether or not you are a danger or have anything funny about your gait or your heart rate or your breathing. Another possibility is using traffic sensors to enable transit authorities to customize traffic light schedules or speed limits based on the data collected for the weather to enable smoother journeys for all road users. Two main technologies underpin the development of smart cities, and that is to improve access to high-speed internet and cellular networks. And with the advent of 5G, even faster data transfer speeds across cellular networks will allow communication among multitudes of different devices to become more efficient and intelligent. How frightening is this, guys? I mean, this really is the technology grid being dropped upon us, and it is the dangling carrot that is going to get everyone to follow with the newest $1,000 mobile device that will be your guardian. The benefits of smart cities can bring to fleets is enormous. Currently, our technology, so add self-driving cars to that, our technology can already monitor data within a vehicle or a piece of heavy equipment. We read about the autonomous satellite-controlled farming infrastructure as well for the smart tractors. I saw one of those yesterday. But for fleet technology, its speed, its engine hour, idling time, and other driving behavior. Imagine when they can tell when you're speeding, but you won't have that access anymore. No more accelerator in some of those self-driving cars, but imagine the possibilities when vehicles are connected to the entire infrastructure network. Sensing, monitoring road and weather conditions could provide real-time updates on any potential dangers. For example, if there was black ice in a particular road during the winter, and remember these new mmWave technologies are not stymied by bad weather conditions, they will be able to read through the storms and warn you in advance. Smart sensors, however, could have an overview of an entire network and be able to quickly detect which parking spots are free and which are not, and instantly direct a driver toward the closest option. This maximizes uptime and cuts down on pollution and fuel consumption. Remember, it's all about selling you the green, carbon smart initiative. And it could also reduce the temptation for drivers to park on double yellow lines after the fruitless search for somewhat of a pause. Smart cities are in fact rising all over the world, and don't think that isn't by design. Barcelona has already used technologies to improve their bus system, which has allowed authorities to optimize routes and schedules based on live data. Just imagine how convenient it would be if the digital displays found at the bus stops were actually accurate. And the idea of a partially automated vehicle no longer seems the distant dream it once was either. No, they're coming. Already, driverless buses, which previously were trialed in Greenwich, London, also have recently made a debut in Estonia and further afield in Singapore. Many governmental departments are already using a variety of IoT sensors to provide public transportation networks, utilize vacant parking spots, and even provide up-to-date information on flood levels. Furthermore, they also have used robocars, which are one of the first public trials of the self-driving car. Smart cities have the capability of improving our day-to-day lives at every level. This is a pro Internet of Things article. And from relatively trivial concerns over a speedier search for a parking space or less congestion to potentially preventing natural disasters with flood detection systems. Look out, Texas. For businesses, better infrastructure powering smart cities will make them more accessible for fleet vehicles, resulting in opportunities for savings. There is no doubt that increased connectivity can help make cities smarter, safer, and easier to navigate. And in order to fully tap in on the potential for smart cities, businesses will need software platforms that allow them to access the data gathered and analyze it appropriately, i.e., you're going to have to get in on the AI cloud. There is no doubt that increased connectivity can help make cities smarter, safer, and easier to navigate. Oh, I read that already. Where there is a mobile resource management need, the software comes in, and by using mobile and cloud to connect all relevant individuals, from back-end managers to fleet drivers and everyone else in between. Mobile resource management allows them to communicate and work with the information provided by smart sensors, and this in turn results in improved driver safety, you puny humans, greater efficiency, and lower risks and better compliance. Yeah, you got to do 55 there, Johnny. Enabling companies to optimize their operations and deliver greater results for customers, the enterprise, and of course, the shareholders. So here it comes. So now I want to get a little bit more into some of the satellite technology that is going to enable a lot of this. We read yesterday or Friday about Elon Musk launching a mysterious rocket in November for Northrop Grumman. They did not divulge what that satellite was going to do. Well, I found an interesting story from 2009. DARPA gives Northrop Grumman part of a $37 million Terahertz satellite contract. Oh, look at that. The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, more affectionately known as DARPA, gave Northrop Grumman Phase 1 of a $37 million Terahertz electronics contract that will support military and space satellites with the development of active receivers and transmitters operating in the 670 gigahertz range that ensures reliable, high-resolution imaging and other applications. The Terahertz electronics program is an extension of the $7.7 million phase of the development of sub-millimeter wave imaging focal plane technology, and that would be the SWIFT program for DARPA. And again, millimeter wave technology. SWIFT demonstrates the first active components such as oscillators and amplifiers operating at 340 gigahertz, enabling systems for high-resolution imaging at the sub-millimeter wave frequencies in all types of weather environments encountered by space and defense satellites. I'm going to point out, in the middle of all of this, we also have DARPA, and we've talked about this many times, their grand challenge for spectrum collaboration, utilizing artificial intelligence to reallocate and provision the radio spectrum. Instead of giving licenses through the FCC, this would allow them to take control of frequencies and spectrums and devices connected to those spectrums on the fly, utilizing artificial intelligence. Well, it's got to be concerning to you if they can do this level of not only surveillance, but they also can use these frequencies for weaponry. SWIFT demonstrates the first active components and oscillators and amplifiers, and they enable systems for high-resolution imaging at sub-millimeter frequencies in all types of weather. They work in the Terahertz electronic program, will provide even higher frequencies, starting at 650 gigahertz this year, and that was in 2009. And as with SWIFT, the program is conducted with the Army Research Laboratory. Well, if I am not mistaken, and I don't want to open this tab over here, let's go over here for a minute. SWIFT and DARPA, because if I'm not mistaken, this was some sort of software-based radio system that would allow it to, on the fly, recalibrate for different frequencies, which of course would help them with their grand spectrum collaboration challenge. Well, now let's read a little bit about terahertz, and this is moving beyond the millimeter wave frequencies up the spectrum to the terahertz spectrum. It will be based on satellite technologies. This new terahertz night vision can see through walls and skin. They are calling it T-ray, and T-ray imaging is one step closer thanks to graphene. In the unfiltered world, there are no secrets. A wall or a cloak blocks observation by only the virtue of the limitations of our vision. But whether it's those of naked human eyes or mechanical seeing devices designed around the parameters of the naked eye, if somehow humans could see light waves at all frequencies, or AI, and make sense of it, we could see everything. Well, we've developed an impressive array of tools which is becoming possible to view the world at different frequencies of light, whether that involves X-ray wavelengths used in radiography or the millimeter wave scanners that see through clothing used now in many airports. And we're going to stop for a minute because I want to get back to some of these airport scanners and a little bit of the millimeter wave technology that is going to be rolled out globally to your homes and even in Africa. So let's read a little bit about the TSA's frequently asked question page about millimeter wave scanners in airports. Quote, they say it uses harmless electromagnetic waves, nothing is harmless, to detect potential threats which are highlighted on a generic outline of a person appearing on a monitor attached to the unit. If no anomaly is detected, an OK appears on the screen with no outline. Well, that seems great, but unfortunately, this explanation by the TSA may be misleading. A closer look into millimeter wave technology and the ways in which it impacts the human body during an average TSA screening reveals that the doses of electromagnetic radiation emitted by the TSA millimeter wave technology machines may be harmful and also may increase your chances of getting cancer. So what is wrong with millimeter wave radiation? And this will be the radiation that your phones are receiving with the new 5G technology. Millimeter wave technology uses microwaves. Remember, we looked at that. Millimeter wave falls within that microwave spectrum. Microwaves have a negative impact on human cells. Microwave frequencies entering the skin will induce a certain level of atomic motion within the cellular structure and heat the skin, which is the least of your problems. How much does this millimeter wave radiation microwave your skin is subject to debate, but most scientists are in agreement that any amount of radiation poses at least some level of risk. In a 2012 paper published by the journal Radiation Research admits that the safety of millimeter wave body scanners is, quote, difficult to impossible to prove using publicly accessible data, unquote. So what does that tell you? The TSA's claim that a negligible risk is associated with their use appears to be the opinion of the TSA and not based upon any scientific fact. So how millimeter waves from a full body scanner may cause cancer? Well, there are also non-thermal effects of millimeter wave radiation. I was reading about that in a paper on Friday, which disrupts the cellular communication in ways that science has yet to fully understand. And the United States Air Force conducted its own research into ultra-high frequency non-ionizing radiation as a potential weapon, and this is part of the paper I was reading. The research determined that the non-thermal activity of millimeter wave radiation directly interferes with the body's ability to protect and heal itself. Ding, ding. And the World Health Organization reports that millimeter waves not only heat the skin, but also can damage the eyesight and potentially cause cancer, particularly skin cancer. So in my professional opinion, and that is this author who received a master's degree in environmental health, and as part of that program, he studied radiation biology, and he learned all kinds of things that were pretty interesting. But in his personal opinion, the safest thing to do at an airport is to always opt for the pat-down. In a situation, that would mean to opt out of the screening process with millimeter wave and get a pat-down and walk through the metal detector instead. It may take longer and be physically intrusive, especially when it's Maud and her sisters that are patting you down, but it will save you and your loved ones from a potential danger. So now let's take it. So millimeter wave is already potentially cancer-causing, and you're going to be bathed in it with all these launches of these new millimeter wave satellites and beaming 5G internet across the globe. Now let's move up the spectrum to even higher frequency radiation to the terahertz range. An impressive and as creepy as millimeter wave scanners may seem, that is just scratching the surface Above these extremely high frequencies is another realm, and that would be terahertz radiation, also known as submillimeter rays, or T-rays for short. It is possible to probe the invisible world even deeper, growing beneath not just the clothing, but also beneath the skin, into plastics, cardboard, and other opaque materials. I thought at one point we read a story about the United States Postal Service using terahertz scanners to scan packages that came through the mail. It's just crazy. And they can also do spectroscopy, like we talked about before, being able to detect whether or not there's biological or explosive substances potentially in or on the package. And getting at these waves has historically been prohibitively challenging in the engineering sense, but not anymore. A team of researchers based out of the University of Maryland. Remember, in Maryland, there's a lot of alphabet agencies and military divisions, and a lot of secret research goes on there, and that claims to have solved one of the fundamental problems with T-ray detection, and that would be temperature. Their team's advanced is described in today's edition of Nature Photonics, and the problem more specifically is that T-ray detectors have needed to be kept at extremely cold temperatures to be used efficiently. Obviously, this makes technology most impractical in its current form, but a result of what is known as the terahertz gap, which is a region of the electromagnetic spectrum between microwaves and infrared that lies mostly outside of our technical capabilities. T-rays are usually measured via proxies. Terahertz radiation is also what is known as non-ionizing, and that is where atoms get bombed with T-rays. Its response is to not get rid of a newly energized electron, as to what might occur in a full photovoltaic effect behind solar power, but also that it keeps it excited within its orbit. And nowhere to go, it gets increasingly energized, and electrons may generate lots and lots of destructive heat and radiation. Well, that's not good. So let's read a little bit about this. So terahertz wireless could make spaceborne satellite links as fast as fiber optics. So like I was telling you, this would be the back end for backhaul for 5G networks. They're talking about using terahertz as a backhaul to the satellite. This research was done at Hiroshima University, interestingly enough, the National Institute of Information and Communication Technology, and also helped with by the Panasonic Corporation, and also development of a terahertz transmitter capable of transmitting digital data at a rate exceeding 100 gigabits, and that would be a terabit per second, over a single channel to use the 300 gigahertz band. And this is right beyond where 5G is going to be. This technology enables data rates 10 times faster than that offered by 5G networks, expected to appear around 2020. And details of the technology will be presented at the International Solid State Circuit Conference in 2017 to be held in February in San Francisco. The terahertz band is new, and it's a vast frequency resource expected to be used for future ultra-high-speed wireless communications. The research group has developed a transmitter that achieves a communication speed of 105 gigabits per second using the frequency range 290 to 315 gigahertz. The range of the frequencies are currently unallocated, but they will be provisioned by the AI, but fall within the frequency range of 275 and 450 gigahertz. These uses will be discussed at the World Radio Communication Conference in 2019 under the International Telecommunication Union Radio Communication section. Last year, the group demonstrated that a wireless link at 300 gigahertz could greatly be enhanced by using a quadrature amplitude modulation. And this year they showed 6 times higher pre-channel data rate exceeding 100 gigahertz for the first time, an integrated circuit-based transmitter. And at this data rate, the whole content on a DVD can be transferred in less than a fraction of a second. This is how they are going to sell this to the masses. Look at, you can download your favorite DVD in just a second, but wait a second. Terahertz transistors could usher in an era of cheap video surveillance worldwide. The new terahertz detecting technology could make intimate body searches at a distance cameras as cheap and as easy as conventional video shots. Terahertz radiation fits into the electromagnetic spectrum between infrared waves and microwaves and can be used for all manner of extraordinary things. One application is for medical imaging. Terahertz waves can penetrate a short distance beneath the skin and also spot tumors. And of course it can. Another use is for surveillance. Terahertz waves pass through all types of clothing, allowing for intimate body searches at a distance. Terahertz radiation also shows promises for real-time spectroscopy, where molecules can be identified by the way they reflect short pulses of terahertz waves. So how best to create and detect terahertz waves? Well, we'll leave the creation aside and talk in this post about detecting terahertz for real-time video images. That has been a tough task until recently, and this story is from 2009, so it's come way beyond this now. The current state-of-the-art technology is to use an array of a microbolometer pixel consisting of a tiny slab of we don't need to read this is crazy, a vanadium oxide that changes their resistance when an infrared photon heats it up. Although designed for infrared up to wavelengths of 14 micrometers, the devices have residual sensitivity at the terahertz frequencies, and in the last couple of years, they have been used to make terahertz video. But a new kid on the block is set to take the microbolometer's crown. In the early 1990s, in France, they sufficiently created a small field transistor that ought to be able to produce and detect terahertz radiation. We just read about them doing that in Maryland as well and putting it on a chip. And the idea is if a transistor is small enough, the electrons in the channel between its source and the drain can be thought of as a 2D plasma, blah, 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 blah. That's impressive for several reasons. First, these transistors detect terahertz waves at room temperature. And second, the readout rate is good enough for video. And finally, the transistors can be built into an array using standard silicon CMOS technology, which means that they have a potential to be as cheap as conventional video cameras. Now, how far can terahertz detectors see you? Terahertz detectors could see through your clothes from a mile away. What? Yes, from a mile away. Now, this is, I think this was a recent story. I don't know. I don't see it. No, this is 2010, guys. Look at this is way down the line, already developed and now being put on satellites as well. Terahertz detectors could see through your clothes from a mile away. Someone may soon be able to tell what materials are in your pockets from tens, if not possibly thousands of feet away. Using terahertz remote sensing, detectors could see through walls, clothing, and packaging materials and immediately identify the unique terahertz wave of the material contained inside, such as explosives or drugs. Until now, terahertz wave detection, the portion of the electromagnetic spectrum between infrared and microwave, hasn't been possible for distances of more than a few inches because the waves were absorbed by ambient moisture in the air, killing the signal. A lot of other researchers thought that terahertz remote sensing was mission impossible, says physicist Jingle, his name is Jingle Liu of the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and the lead author of the study published in the Nature Photonics magazine. Liu's team solved the problem by not relying on the terahertz waves themselves to carry the signal back to the detector. Instead, they used the reflection created by the lasers pointed at the target. Two lasers at different frequencies are aimed at the target together to generate plasma, and this plasma emits fluorescence that is scattered in a characteristic way by the terahertz radiation of the material, and it hits and the reflection of the fluorescence is detectable from remote distances. Oh, well, listen to that. Researchers have also tested hundreds of different substances and created a library of terahertz spectrum to compare the signal from the target and instantly identify, using artificial intelligence, the material that was hit. Researchers demonstrated that they could detect the signal from 67 feet away, the length of their laboratory space, but theoretically, they could identify material from hundreds of feet or even miles away. Homeland Security and military agencies have been struggling for years to get technology like this. Of course they have been, says Abdulazad at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and we're going to read a study by them. I think the approach they have revealed is really, really unique. The first application of this technology will likely be for the remote detection of roadside bombs, also known as IEDs by the military. Homeland Security and the Defense Department were the primary funders of this research. Terahertz detectors could also be used for airport security and to detect illegal substances hidden in people's clothes or on their fingertips. The approach will be less invasive than X-rays because terahertz are much lower in energy, and it would not reveal anything concealed inside of the body because terahertz signals cannot go through water or go through metal. Theoretically, Lou says, put on a big tinfoil hat then. Terahertz remote sensing could also be used to identify the composition of an unknown toxic spill in the environment or the composition of objects in space. So we're going to use this for some of our radio astronomy, I am sure, as well. All right, so then I came across a study out of the National Institute of Health's database, biological mechanisms involved in terahertz radiation. This is the National Institute of Health, remember. Terahertz radiation may interact with cellular components at multiple levels, including chromosomes, DNA, genes, and proteins. At the level of DNA and chromosomes, they have an exposed monolayered cultured human hamster hybrid cell, and they used 106 terahertz radiation with a power density ranging from 0.043 milliwatts per centimeter to 0.43 milliwatts per centimeter. The results indicated that the terahertz radiation affected the chromatid separation during I know this is kind of technical, the mitotic anaphase and telophase, and that's like where you're splitting genes or I know the anaphase and the telophase are where your DNA is splitting in the creation of a child. Recently, several studies have indicated that the non-thermal effects, and these are the ones that they say are safe, of terahertz radiation may affect the stability of DNA by establishing a system in vitro leading to chromosomal aberrations of human lymphocytes and genetic changes during the differentiation of mouse stem cells. Ding, 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 ding. So there definitely is an issue here. Now listen to this. At the same level of genes and proteins, the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory, we just read about them, has studied the genetic changes in Jucat cells exposed to continuous terahertz radiation, and they observed that the terahertz radiation primarily affected genes encoding inflammatory cytokines, including the IL-2 inducible T-cell kinase, the integral-linked kinase-associated serine, threonine phosphatase, and the interleukin IL-6 and the interleukin-8. They have investigated the relationship between the broad-spectrum terahertz radiation and genetic changes and have found, and this is dedicated to Dal, and they found that the application of terahertz radiation accelerated cell differentiation by activating the transcription factor peroxiome proliferation activated receptor gamma, indicating, and this is the important part, that terahertz radiation may be a potential tool for cellular reprogramming. Ding, ding, ding. Oh, we can use terahertz radiation to reprogram cells at a distance. Now, how convenient is that? And the Air Force Radiation Laboratory is the one that was studying those changes. It's got to make you feel all warm and fuzzy. I know it does me. All right, so then a story out of MIT Technology Review. I've covered this one a couple times before, but we are just going to review this now. This is from 2009. How terahertz waves tear apart DNA. And this was out of a publication that came out of, we're going to find it. Oh, it was the laboratory in New Mexico. Great things are expected out of terahertz waves and the radiation that fills the slot of the electromagnetic spectrum. Terahertz waves passes through non-conducting materials such as clothes, paper, wood, brick. The other one said it didn't, but I guess it does. And so cameras sensitive to them can peer inside envelopes into living rooms and frisk people at a distance. By the way, and I think they have one of these in New York City that they're using right now. It's mobile version. The way terahertz waves are absorbed and emitted can also be used to determine the chemical composition of a material, and even though they don't travel far inside the body, there is a great hope that the waves can be used to spot a tumor near the surface of the skin. With all this potential, there's no wonder that researchers on terahertz has exploded in the last 10 years or so. But what are the health effects? Well, at first glance, it's easy to dismiss any notion that they can be damaging, but we just read that National Institute of Health publication. Terahertz photons are not energetic enough to break chemical bonds or ionize atoms or molecules, the chief reasons why high-energy photons such as X-rays and UV are so bad for us. But could there be another mechanism at work? Well, evidence suggests that terahertz radiation damages biological systems is mixed. Some studies report that significant genetic damage occurs, while others, although similar, showed none, says Boyan Alexandrov at the Center for Nonlinear Studies at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. Now, these guys think they know why. Alexandrov and company have created a model to investigate how terahertz fields interact with double-stranded DNA, and what they found is remarkable. They say that although the force generated is tiny, resonant effects allow terahertz waves to unzip double-stranded DNA, creating bubbles in the double strand that could significantly interfere with the process of gene expression and DNA replication. That is a jaw-dropping conclusion. Yeah, guys, because they'll be able to CRISPR you on the fly, zip and unzip your DNA using their terahertz satellites. And it also explains why evidence has been so hard to garner. Ordinarily, resonant effects are not powerful enough to do this kind of damage, but nonlinear resonances can, and nonlinear instabilities are much less likely to form, which explains why the character of terahertz genotoxic effects are probabilistic rather than deterministic, says the team. This should set the cat among the pigeons. Of course, terahertz waves are a natural part of the environment, just like visible and infrared, but a new generation of cameras is set to appear that not only record terahertz waves, but also bombards us with them. And if our exposure is set to increase, then the question needs to urgently be answered, is what level of terahertz exposure is safe? So step right up for your 5G, guys, because it is coming. Now, we're going to do one more step in the last minute of the show. And no, I guess we're not. We'll start out here tomorrow. Have an awesome Tuesday, and I will catch up with you tomorrow.